Hi everyone, I'm Zoha and I am going to be taking up the role of the A-Levels biology tutor at Tutorify. Today is going to be our very first lecture and it's going to be a simple introduction. I'm going to walk you guys through how we're going to be proceeding with the syllabus in the coming weeks. I'm trying to break it down into digestible bits. And I'm trying to focus on the things that are really going to matter to you when you are taking the exam, strategies and how you can best prepare for the exam, and also of course just some tiny its and bits here and there and how you can maximize your marks. And of course I'll be working on solidifying your concepts. Since these are going to be published on YouTube, feel free to leave your questions down in the comments and I will try and answer them as soon as I possibly can. So a little bit about myself. I am a current psychology major, Stanford University, with a concentration in neuroscience. I'm trying to get into med school. Let's hope for the best. But as of now, I recently graduated from A-Levels last year, and biology was one of my favorite subjects back then. And I think it's a beautiful subject, and I feel as if everyone should get the chance to actually learn biology rather than, simply going for those strategies to just get the best possible marks, which of course is important, but it's also very important to realize that it is these 2 years in your life when you actually develop love for a particular subject. So it's really important to go in depth here. So just jumping right in, we're going to be looking at the syllabus first of all. We're going to be starting with cell structure. I think I'm going to be spending probably 2 or 3 lectures discussing this, since this is a particularly important chapter, and also since this is the very first chapter, so that inertia and actually starting to read your textbook and to actually like jumping into the subject matter, it can be a little too much. So we're going to be starting and we're going to be spending a little more time on cell structure. Also, a lot of the technical bits that end up, troubling students in exams, things that they didn't really expect to show up, a lot of them end up coming from this particular chapter, which, a lot of the times the students underestimate. We're going to be talking about cell biology and microscopy, the different types of microscopes, animals and plant cells, what they have in common, what is different between them. We're going to be talking about, electron microscopy, the different types of cells. There's also going to be a brief mention of viruses, why we don't classify them as cells. We're going to be talking about different kingdoms of cells, how we of organisms, how we classify organisms into different kingdoms, the hierarchies, and also the 2 different types of cells. We're going to be elaborating more upon the similarities and differences and why these similarities and differences are so fundamentally important that these 2 different types of cells had to be classified into 2 entirely different categories. Then we have biological molecules. This chapter is a little material heavy, and so it is really easy to understand, but actually memorizing this information can be a bit of a hefty task. This is going to have, your carbohydrates and your lipids and proteins and water, the different amounts of energy that each of these molecules contains, the different bonds that they have, how these bonds are formed, how they can break down. All of that stuff, you're going to find that in biological molecules. Then you have enzymes. I'd say this is a relatively easy chapter, and if you want to score well in the exam, this is one chapter that I'd say you should really try your luck in absolutely mastering, because it's not hard to master it. This is again very technical, not very information heavy, unlike the previous chapter, but actually very technical. We're going to be talking about enzymes. We're going to be talking about the different factors that are going to impact the enzyme action. For instance, the temperature, the substrate concentration, the enzyme concentration. We're going to be talking about inhibitors, the different types of inhibitors, what makes them different. We're going to be talking about how to immobilize enzymes and also why immobilizing enzymes can be important at times. As you progress through, the syllabus, I think it's very important to be reading the syllabus in the beginning, so you have, an idea on how you want to break down this entire syllabus for your exam preparation. So it's very important to actually go over this, glossary. When you're done watching this video, please make sure that you actually go over this, because this really will help when you start preparing for your exam. Then we have cell membranes and transport. Again, this is, I think, a little bit of both, because it does have materials. It's not very material heavy, but it's also very technical. You need to, get a grasp, especially of cell signaling, because in your exam, it's very common for Cambridge to, give a particular question in cell signaling on how that works, especially with the example of insulin. So it's very common to have that particular question, and it's really important that you actually master this chapter. Then you have the mitotic cell cycle. This again is a very technical chapter, not very information heavy. As long as you know the names of the different stages and the main functions that each of these different phases and stages serve, you're good to go. So this won't be that hard. There is some mention of telomeres, stem cells, and cancer cells. But again, that's a very minute part of the chapter. Most of it actually focuses on, cell division and why that's important and how that helps, further human life. Then you have nucleic acids and protein synthesis.